I'm very, very happy for my own personal reasons about Mike D'Antoni being signed, because this could be very, very fun brand of basketball to watch.
Will D'Antoni lead the Lakers to a title this season?
You know, you look at it, and there's so many great teams out there this year who could take down the Lakers in the West. Starting off, obviously, with the Oklahoma City Thunder, who have been nothing short of remarkable this season. They look almost unchanged from how they had played with James Harden. Also, a team I really wasn't too sold on at the start of the season in San Antonio. Once again, just proved me wrong. Every year it seems like critics write them off as being too old. Once again, very good team. You know, I do think they will get to the final. I don't think they're better than Miami right now. I think Miami is still the title favorite. But I think with D'Antoni's system, Mike D'Antoni will get to his first final. He's never had a player like Dwight Howard man in the middle for his defense, and that's always been his team's shortcomings. Last season, there was a huge increase in their defensive effectiveness for D'Antoni before he was fired last season. But most of that credit is given to Mike Woodson because of his defensive prowess. So, with Dwight Howard manning the middle, I said, and if this team can run as well as I think they can, I think Kobe Bryant might start putting up 30 points a game a night again, because the system does fit to his strength if his knees hold up. I do say they get to the finals, but don't win a title.
And a big question here, is he the right coach for this team?
You know, I've heard a lot of people talk about it. Stephen A. this morning was saying how he really wasn't, and I have to disagree with him on that, because I think with this type of team, obviously Phil Jackson would have been a great coach for this team. He's one of the most storied coaches in NBA history, but truth be told, I think D'Antoni might be a better fit for this team, at least in the short term. It might cause some problems later on because his brand of basketball might cause some injuries. But if everyone's in max health, I think it will be the best system. This team is built to put the ball in the basket, and with D'Antoni, they could put up historic numbers on that end. And on the defensive end, with Dwight Howard, they're not going to be as bad as most like D'Antoni teams have been. So, was this the right choice? I have to say yes.
And do you think Dwight Howard will fit in with all of this new changes?
I'm a bit of a skeptic on that. I cannot really tell you right now. The Mike D'Antoni system basically advocates for having no one block the paint, and that's a big deal because that's what Dwight Howard has done for his entire year. He's going to have to be a monster on pick and roll to put up the normal numbers he's been able to put up. I think he has a chance to do this, especially with Steve Nash. So something of a hybrid Amari Stoudemire, that could be really interesting to see what happens. The big storyline for me is what's going to happen to Pau Gasol. A player is somewhat of his skill set back when he was in his prime in Phoenix and when D'Antoni was winning all those games with the Suns was Boris Diaw, the Pau Gasol. And is Pau Gasol going to be kind of pushed into that role? That's my big question. He doesn't play like Sean Marion did in that system. That's not his game. He's much more of an inside post-up player. And D'Antoni usually uses that type of player as a facilitator. So that's going to be a huge key for me. If she's not as good as she's been in recent seasons, that could be a major factor. Now, Pau Gasol has been kind of cast aside off to the almost three-point line under Mike Brown. So I think it actually could be an improvement under D'Antoni, even after all I've just said.
Yeah, and read an article, Steve Nash does like the coaching options, and he was happy with Mike D'Antoni being the coach. Do you think Mike D'Antoni getting support from the players, he'll have a good start with the Lakers?
Are you asking if D'Antoni will fit in with the players? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay. Mike D'Antoni is coming into a situation that's very, very good for him. For starters, we're talking about Steve Nash. Now, without D'Antoni, we'd be talking about a player like an all-star Steve Nash. We're not talking about Hall of Famer Steve Nash. This is a two-time MVP player who was made by a system. He would not have been as great without D'Antoni, so he has to love Mike D'Antoni coming back into his life as his coach. And Kobe Bryant has ties with D'Antoni through his time when he grew up in Italy, through his dad, and D'Antoni has done a lot with the USA basketball team, and Kobe really does like D'Antoni. So those two presences in the locker room, obviously two of the best leaders in that Lakers locker room. If they like D'Antoni, I'm sure the other team, the rest of their team, will follow in suit, and that will make D'Antoni fit in great with this team, in my opinion.
And also, Phil Jackson was prepared to also, he was a choice too in this. And he was stunned. He got the job turned down. How do you think Phil Jackson feels about this decision?
Well, I read that Phil Jackson has been absolutely shocked by this. He thought he was the only candidate. Mitch Kupchak had supposedly said earlier in the week in secret that Phil Jackson was the only candidate they were even truthfully considering. I think Phil Jackson's got to be pretty hurt. However, the Lakers are handling this very well. As reported by Adrian Wojnarowski, though, Phil Jackson was kind of trying to use Jim Buss, and that could have been a big issue for the Lakers. Phil Jackson asking for limited road games, management of basketball operations, stuff that the front office would usually do. So the Lakers, in the end, have helped Phil Jackson, even though he was almost trying to hurt them by making so many demands. So Phil Jackson has to be pretty stunned. I think the whole basketball world is pretty stunned.
And, you know, Phil Jackson, and I read this too, there's a benefit here for this team trying to find right now. Jackson's triangle offense was seen as a benefit to Kobe Bryant and Paul Gasol. There wasn't as much for Steve Nash and Dwight Howard. So Mike D'Antoni is probably going to make Steve Nash and Dwight Howard with his offense a little bit better than Phil Jackson's. What do you agree with me on that?
Obviously with Steve Nash, I do. Steve Nash is going to be a focal point of this offense if his body can hold up. Where he was the superstar in D'Antoni's system for a good 5 years. As far as Dwight Howard goes, like I said, I don't know what his role is going to be. D'Antoni's never really used a dominant center. His center basically in Phoenix was Amari Stoudemire, and obviously Howard is a very different player than Stoudemire. So if he can incorporate more of a post game into his system, I think Howard fits well into the D'Antoni system. Probably not as well if he would have fit into the triangle, because in the triangle the center is a focal point. You look at what Phil Jackson has done with centers such as Shaq, dating back. Bill Cartwright was a great center. And then recently Andrew Bynum, the center's been a focal point. So I say Dwight Howard would have fit better in the triangle, but Steve Nash obviously fits better in that fast-paced D'Antoni system.
Well, going on to Andrew Bynum, there's been more complications with his injury, and this really affects the 76ers as he gets hurt, and I believe he will be out for about 5 to 6 weeks. Will this affect the 76ers a lot with this team?
Oh, no question about it. This is a team that lost Andre Iguodala, and he was one of their main scoring threats last season. They lost Lou Williams. He was one of their main scoring threats last season. Andrew Bynum was supposed to be the focal point of this team, not just one of the best guys like he was in LA. He was supposed to be the star. Without him, this is a perimeter fringe playoff team. Maybe they get an 8 seed. It's going to be interesting to see when he comes back how much better the team can get. But right now, they're going to have to fight for their playoff lives.
Yeah, and the 76ers have a good start for it to start without Bynum, and have been without Jason Richardson because of the ankle injury for the past 5 games. Are injuries really going to kill the 76ers?
Well, obviously, like I just said, Bynum being out is going to kill this team. Jason Richardson being out, was once thought of a little bit overrated in my opinion. Now he's a little underrated. Still a great scorer when he wants to be. Without Lou Williams now, he was expected to take up at least some of the scoring load. So without him and Bynum, 2 of their best scorers, they're going to have some problems putting the ball in the basket, as they did last year, but without the defensive prowess of Andre Iguodala.
And, you know, the 76ers team, they're going to be a good team this year, no doubt, with Andre Iguodala and they're really good players so far. I mean, this team is going to be good. Do you think this team's a playoff team?
Well, before Bynum, I put them in my top 3 East teams. Now I'm barely putting them in my top 8. Teams like the Cavaliers, in my opinion, could come in and take a playoff spot away from this team now without finals. If he has any more problems, this is any more games in the 5 to 6 weeks he's expected to, there might be a chance they miss the playoffs this year.
Yeah, and also sources say he might not come back until January. And I know, Rosen, you have a top 5 power rankings for us for the NBA. Let's hear your number 5.
Okay, number 5, I have a team I probably would have had somewhere around 15, 16 to start the season. And that's the team that's been the biggest surprise to me of all. And it's not like this team isn't paying money for their players. They're paying some of the most money in the NBA, and that's the New York Knicks. Carmelo Anthony, without Amari Stoudemire, is playing, in my opinion, the best basketball of his life at the 4, the power forward position. He looks so good right now. For once in his career, I never thought he was a superstar. I always thought he was a great player in Denver, but never a superstar. Came to the Knicks, looked even worse than Denver. Almost just like a regular good player, not even up to that star level anymore. Now he looks like a superstar. He's one of the top 10 players in the NBA for the first time in his career. Also, Jason Kidd, to me, is having almost a perfect season for him, leading this team. That has been a huge acquisition, in my opinion. Raymond Felton, kind of lambasted at the start of the year, criticized, poked fun at as being one of the worst team players in the NBA after his just awful stint in Portland. He's been very good. Tyson Chandler proving once again why he's a top 20 player in the NBA. Just great defensive skills. So right now, I can't believe I'm saying it, but they are one of my top 5 teams. And number 4, I have the San Antonio Spurs, who are left out of my top 3 Western Conference teams at the start of the season. Another team that I really doubted at the start of the season. Oh, Tim Duncan's too old. Manu Ginobili's too old. Tony Parker's getting up their age. Well, I'm wrong again. Tim Duncan leading his team in points with 89 points per game in only 30 minutes. Tim Duncan just absolutely ageless. Tony Parker having a great year, just like usual. And they're doing all of this with Manu Ginobili missing 2 games so far. So, you know, you look at this team, they have, I'm looking here, 5 guys averaging over 10 points per game. Gary Neal and Kawhi Leonard both contributing greatly. Steven Jackson been flying a little under the radar for this team. Not playing great, but he will pick it up. Forrest Diaw, much of the same, and same with DeJuan Blair. But this team, their statistics don't say how great they are. They are an absolutely fantastic regular season team. Lately, they haven't been a great playoff team, but I predict another 60 or so win season for this team. My number 3 team, we've been talking about the coaching situation a lot on the show today. I have to go with the Lakers. They always stand at 3-4, but with Bernie Bickerstaff at the helm of the last 2 games, they've won their last 2 games. Like I said, Mike D'Antoni should help this team a lot. I'm predicting possibly a 65 to 70 win season if this team can realize their potential. But probably more in the range of low 60s to high 50s winning season. But right now, this team just looks so talented. Kobe is playing once again at the peak of his performance. You have Dwight Howard and Pau Gasol. Pau Gasol recently kind of finding himself with Bernie Bickerstaff after Mike Brown kind of shrugged him aside in the last couple of years out of the paint. Howard looks absolutely great on this team. I'm saying with only seeing 1 full game from Steve Nash. Their point guard situation is a little ugly right now, but that will change when Nash gets back. Antoine Jameson only averaging 3.6 points per game. That's a little cause for concern for me. But right now, there's not too many teams that have ever had this much talent, so I put them at number 3. Number 2 is the team before they traded one of their stars, who I would have obviously had at number 2. Almost everyone's had them at number 2, and that's the Oklahoma City Thunder. You look at the team, Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook, once again, just being one of the most dynamic duos in the NBA. Besides them, though, Kevin Martin averaging 17.7 points per game, really helping this team out. Serge Ibaka taking on some of the scoring load with a 14.6 per game average versus his career total of, versus his career total of 8.7 points per